Hello and welcome everyone to another edition of Signs, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. I'm your host and narrator, Erik Roth, Shamanic Astrologer, and we're going to be looking at the September astrological highlights. So I'll be sharing some things with you that are going to be going on throughout the month of September, which leads into a very active October of 2021. So when it comes to the astrological world, this is we're getting into some prime territory with a lot of activity. So this is episode 24 of Signs, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. And in the month of September here, there is a number of activities that are taking place, including the September Equinox, some alignments, including the Neptune-Sun Opposition, and Mercury Retrograde. So all of these things are taking place, and I'm going to be doing this in as the calendar rolls from the 1st through the 30th. Again, these are just the major things that are taking place. Not all of the month is going to be talked about, or else it'd be a very, very long video. So let's get into it very shortly here. But first, what we'd like to do is do an invocation and an acknowledgement, because we're here to honor the stars and the planets and all of our relations and creation itself. I want to give thanks to the elements, to the signs, to the planets, to the directions, and to all the stars in the sky, and our relationship to earth and sky, and that how much that matters to our shamanic path, our journey through this existence. And in each and every day, we connect to it in a richer and deeper, more dynamic way. In this past recent weeks, I myself have been honoring the Antares and Vega, been very prominent in the sky, Jupiter, Saturn, the Moon, and the constellations currently in the south, the Scorpion, the Archer, and the Goatfish. It's a great time to connect also to the summer triangle with Vega, Deneb, and Polaris. So honor all of this at this time and this season. That we are here as participants, stewards of the relationship between earth and sky, as within, so without, as above, so below. As it goes in the universe, so it goes in the soul. All right, let's move into the highlights. What else is going on? What else am I going to be sharing about? Well, of course, Mercury retrograde and the equinox and the Neptune-Sun opposition, but also Jupiter and the tail of the sea goat. That would be the constellation of the sea goat. A Venus-Vesta conjunction that is in opposition to the dwarf planet Eris, and of course, the new and full moons. Well, let's start with what is happening towards the beginning of the month of September. And this would be the Venus-Vesta conjunction and the succeeding oppositions that happen between this alignment. As you can see in this chart here, Venus and Vesta conjunct, while this is shown in the exact Venus Eris opposition, September 5th and 6th, depending on what part of the world you're in. Vesta doesn't get into an Eris opposition until September 9th, but a few days before that, on September 3rd, is the Venus-Vesta conjunction. And this is all taking place in the sign of Libra with Eris in Aries. And it'll be with the star of Spica. So Spica is going to be figuring prominently. Spica represents this deeper immersion into the patterns and the rhythms of the earth and the bounty that comes with the harvest. And a star has a connection in the sky to what the priestess constellation, what is symbolized there is she's holding a grain or grains of various types. It could be wheat, it could be corn, it could be amaranth, mullet. There's all kinds of depictions that what she may be holding there, but it's the symbol of our own humanity's relationship to Earth itself, and how important it is to connect into the bounty that this comes each and every year. That there are fruits and vegetables and grains that are available to all of us, essentially. You know, in if certainly we connect into it, but essentially they're there just within our grasp here, and that it happens in various places in the earth, some more than others. But this is it's kind of a powerful symbol of our own, representative of how we connect into the earth, how we connect into the sky. So Vesta and Venus experience a conjunction with each other either every year or nearly every year. And this conjunction on September 3rd, this in Libra, is going to be followed up by 2 conjunctions in February. So in less than 6 months, there's 2 more conjunctions that are happening between Vesta and Venus in the sign of Capricorn in 2022. And with this conjunction combined with the opposition of Eris in the sign of Aries, it creates opportunities to celebrate the sacred role that relationships play in our lives, and also showing up for ourselves within the relationship itself. So how relationship shows up in our lives, but our own individual relationship with ourselves and with the Earth Mother. Eris is a dwarf planet that shows up for us and helping us show up for ourselves, helping us speak our truths. It's connected to the feminine, so more of you might say it's a combination of the feminine, Aries, Scorpio, and maybe a little bit of Gemini in there thrown in. But there's a greater purpose with her, and she's like none of those singularly, but maybe all of those, but with some additional layers combined. And she's here to help us call out what needs to be called out, but in a way that's not. It's not that call out just to make things up and to share some false truths, but the actual truth, the reality, the things that we might be ignoring, the issues that we may be putting aside, helping us call those things out in our lives and in our communities. Let's see what what looks like in the sky with Venus and Vesta and Spica. As you can see here, we have Venus, Vesta, and Spica all sort of clustered together. Now, Vesta is not visible to the naked eye at this time of year, and Vesta only becomes visible during times when she's in opposition with the sun, and you have to be under perfectly dark skies to be able to see her. This really very, very large. In fact, it's the only asteroid out there that is visible to the naked eye, and it's only when it's near and around the opposition with the sun for about a few weeks that actually becomes visible. Right there in the priestess, and in this graphic, we have Spica right here representing that grain of the earth, and Parima being sort of connecting to the head and shoulders, along with Zanaya and Zavijava here as well, all part of this, the upper part of the priestess. And down here we have the legs, and to the left here, the scales constellation, and then just tail end here of the nebula, the tail of the lion. So this is the star scene that you can see in the early evening sky just after sunset. And some may not be able to see Mercury, which is not far, which I'm going to talk about Mercury and Spica a little bit later on in this video. But Vesta won't be visible, but you can see where I've marked it to show where it could be in relation to these to the star Haas or Haze and Spica, and then just above, and maybe depending on your angle, either to the left or the right, Vesta, and what hemisphere you're in. There's certainly a little different perspective in the what time of day and the hemisphere of the Earth you're in. All right, so after that comes a new moon. September's new moon takes place at 14 degrees 38 minutes in the sign of Virgo. A Virgo new moon just dives us into the beginnings the sacred beginnings and sacred patterns. These are the fine details and webs of the starry nights, spiders and schematics of the living knowledge embodied in temples and other megalithic structures. And a lot of these structures, these megalithic structures, I like to call them living libraries because they convey knowledge of times past, but not just necessarily just purely conventional knowledge, but things that have to do with the relationship that we have with Earth and sky, along with the celebrations and the ceremonies that took place in these various sites across the globe. In Linda Hill's Sabian Oracle, 15 Virgo, which would be the one adding one and the Sabian symbols, the fine lace ornamental handkerchief, that's the symbol. The key words have to do with delicacy, fragileness, sensitivity, and refinement. She goes into also looking but not touching. It's sort of an appreciation for what is in front of us, a connection to that, but not necessarily getting too deeply involved in it, more like the process, the details coming out, and the tenderness that we can exhibit in seeing something like that and absorbing it in that fashion. So it conveys, that's of course very symbolic and help us understand, and even things that are like, think of a fine lace ornamental handkerchief or a delicacy, a feeling or a sensitivity. There's a pattern, an ancient pattern there that can be tuned into, a refinement that can be connected with, and also a fragileness that if it's not taken care of, that it can go into disrepair, and we could, the knowledge could be lost, it could be forgotten. That is the new moon, and this is where the new moon is located. Now, obviously, the moon is not visible during a new moon. In fact, it's always a great time at night to see the stars without the presence of the moon, because the moon can sometimes be so bright at it, especially during full moons, it blocks out a lot of the stars around it and any planets that might be nearby too. So in this case, it takes place in the Lion constellation, and really moving into that deeper mystery between the lion and the priestess, and the mysteries of the Sphinx and the riddles of the Sphinx. There is that boundary between the lion and the priestess, as well as between the signs of Leo and Virgo, which Regulus represents there here on the screen. Regulus had moved in 2011 to the sign of Virgo, and had been in the sign of Leo for over 2,000 years before moving into that. Spica sits at 24 degrees Libra, and so will be another several hundred years before it actually moves into the sign of Scorpio down the road. But this is the night sky, and we can see Venus and Spica up here at the new moon, along with Vesta and Mercury here. Mars is not visible to the naked eye. Only with some telescope will you be able to really see that, because it's too dim and too far away in the on the other side of the sun at this time. Okay, the next highlight here in September is September 14th, 2021, Neptune-Sun opposition. So they are in the early morning skies in opposition. Like, that's when the exact opposition happens in the Americas. And so maybe on the East Asia, it'll be the next day, at the end of the day, or coming into the next day, as the sort of international dateline crosses over. And so it's like, we got to think of that 24-hour orb we have here. So the opposition isn't that something is in opposing, like in conflict, but it's more about the illumination, like a full moon, of what the sun will help bring into focus. And in this case, Neptune in Pisces, which is 21 degrees, 47 minutes. Pisces is where the opposition takes place. And it pertains to the fogginess of our reality, the goals that we set. This alignment is an annual thing. So this happens every year, and it's a few days different each and every year, helping to, so next year it'll be a little bit later in September. helping to open up the heart and spirit with greater compassion and empathy. It is then the resistance of this process that can create significant challenges in our individual and collective lives. So it's something if we're resisting, if we're going against our own path, if you will, or against what you might say could be beneficial to us through learning, through initiation, and we're holding on to things that are more toxic in our lives or are taking us into a place that ends up lying to ourselves or lying about our path and not wanting to contribute to our livelihood or our full participation in our soul's path, then that could create much more in the way of obstacles or things like depression and or other experiences where we might have certain losses and we're not able to fully come to terms with that. And in this case, this is about not having expectations. Neptune-Sun is not about expectations. It's about the sort of the celestial realm perception where the middle world really doesn't matter, except in helping connect it up to into the divine realm. All right, then we move into on the 17th, we have the Jupiter in the tail of the sea goat. So the sea goat is a constellation, or the goat fish, as we call it sometimes. Some authors use sea goat. I know William Tyler Olcott in the book Star Lore uses the sea goat as crosses it with Capricornus as his description of the constellation. But either way, it's the same constellation. And so Jupiter will be entering that tail, the tail of the goatfish or tail of the sea goat. The star, the Deneb Algeti, is the main one we're talking about, but also Nashira. They're both the two stars that represent the tail. Deneb Algeti literally means the tail of the goat, and the other star called Nashira at 22 degrees Aquarius means the fortunate one or bringer of good tidings. So both of these will be strongly activated during this passage of Jupiter in this area between in September, October, and November. Jupiter has 3 conjunctions with the Deneb Algeti: April 3rd, earlier this year, 2021, September 17th, and then 2 months later, November 17th. And the September 17th is going to be extra special because the moon, the waxing gibbous moon, is going to be there. The Deneb Algeti sits at 2350 Aquarius, so nearly 24 degrees, while Nashira sits about over 1.5 degrees away at just about 22 degrees Aquarius. And Jupiter can act as an expansive archetypal agent in motion, helping to cultivate our vision quest and our spiritual path. So this is a time where Jupiter can help open up the consciousness of the in-between realm, between the water domain and the earth domain, of the cosmic waters coming down of wisdom and knowledge into the material realm, from a place of consciousness into physical reality. And it's new, it's novelty, it's expansive, helping us open doors, synchronicities, and new allies. This is Jupiter's retrograde motion is to help us review this, to help us maybe look at what has already been developed and whether it's something that is important for us to keep or have, or maybe develop further and we'll get into greater refinement, maybe in a way that the priestess constellation I talked about and Virgo. This could be a way to create finer details with it, to apply it in a way that is in service to humanity. And Deneb Algeti is a star that is one of the 15 magical stars, the Bohemian stars, that were originally credited to Hermes Trismegistus Thoth, and where a lot of astrologers, alchemists, and seers, and other folks throughout the ages have worked with in helping manifest helping to create things, to work with things on an alchemically magical level. So these are really powerful stars that a lot of them work with creating talismans and working with elements. And this is kind of on the fringe of astrology, but it was looked at back then as a little more in the main area, one of the main areas of astrology that astrologers did work with back then. And in shamanic astrology, it's looked at as stars in a way to create, especially when they're activated by these planets or the season, to connect with ceremonially in our lives and in the communities and the collective. One thing to note is that Jupiter stays within 2 degrees of the Neb Al-Jedi, and to also we can include Nashira in that. From August 30th to December 3rd, a period of 96 days. So it's a little, the range is a little bit different with Nashira, but it's not much different than the 96-day period. This is a long time that spends in the tail of the goat. So this is a really important time. So September 17th can be definitely a powerful time for ceremony. This is what it looks like in the sky. For those of you who have the benefit of being able to see this in the mid-evening sky on September 17th, but we can even look at most of September. As I mentioned, September 7th through the 30th is a time when it's going to be within 1 degree of the Neb Al-Jedi plus Nashira afterwards in October. We see the waxing gibbous moon coming through here, helping Jupiter activate this area, and Saturn not far here in the goatfish in the same constellation, with the moon having been conjunct Saturn on the day before, on September 16th. And we can also see Fomalhaut, where this is the beginning of the Pisces zone, right in this area here. Fomalhaut's in this 4 degrees Pisces, so it's kind of the part of the southern fish is in the sign of Pisces, but most of it is still in the sign of Aquarius. And most of the water bear is in the sign of Pisces, and but then the outstretched arm here of the water bear is still in the sign of Aquarius at this time in history. So a great time to do ceremony, meditation, and connect to the gifts from the cosmic realm and the transition zone between the water and the earth, and how we can open up to that co-creative process in co-creation with the cosmos. Also coming up here in September is something that I've shared with before, the Healing Stars online series that I'm partnering with Kaylin Castell to do. This is the details can be found at mystaralchemy.com. There's also a YouTube preview channel that talks about this particular series and this channel, this website. And this is the first of many series that we are planning to do with the stars and different groups of stars, and working with them magically and ceremonially, and how shamanic astrology connects to it. So you can learn more about that at mystaralchemy.com. And the first course starts on September 22nd, and they will all be recorded. So for those that aren't able to tune into that, you can tune into later, but the price does go up beginning, I believe it's September 5th or 6th, to tune in to that, so that for those that want to really learn more about the mysteries of the stars and how to use them ceremonially and magically, this is the place to go. And again, this is inspired to some degree by Daniel Giamario and the work at the Shamanic Astrology Paradigm, but also inspired by all the peoples that have come before us across the globe that have worked with these stars throughout the ages. All right, so then we have a full moon, September 20th, 2021. August full moon takes place at 28 degrees 13 minutes in the sign of Pisces. This full moon it's only 7 degrees from Neptune, so it really connects us to some of the same material that I've shared about with the Neptune-Sun opposition. There is a process with this. When I look at the Sabian Oracle, this represents 29 Pisces, Sabian Oracle by Linda Hill. And it symbolizes light breaking into many colors as it passes through a prism. Rewards coming through from past generations, spectrum analysis, color and crystal healing, rainbows, light refraction, side effects, considering many facets of the situation, endless opportunities, optics, sight, and seeing. There was a few other words that she put in there, which convey a lot of the same ideas that I didn't write. I didn't copy into this. So this is what 29 Pisces represents in her book. And I like it. I think it's certainly fitting for this full moon and the prism of, kind of again, a transition zone into the celestial realm, and how, that there's this great field of all possibilities out there, and that the moon and sun are helping illuminate this. It's also, when you think of Pisces and Virgo, because the sun is in Virgo during this time, we think of the being in service to spirit, showing up and volunteering and spiritually connecting into the divine. This is a great time for that. Certainly a very, can be, each of these kinds of moon phases can be powerful ceremonial tools and processes of initiations for a person. So I encourage those that want to meditate during this time around some of these qualities or things that you might divine yourself. You might tune into that connect into maybe even a different wavelength, maybe a different thing that I'm not seeing here. Feel free to share that yourself if you wish. All right, so where's this full moon? Right about the March equinox point, something that we can actually look at it as a bridge, maybe a prism rainbow bridge to a new beginning, a new start. Because this is happening just 2 days before the September equinox. So this is the opposite side of the sky as it's rising. So it's a great time. Because the moon is so full, you won't be able to see the fish constellation very well. So you'd have to wait at least 2 or 3 nights before you'd be able to see the fish constellation in its fullness. But you'll be able to see where I've marked it here with that, the projected equator and the ecliptic, or the plane of the solar system where the sun travels and the planets travel, they cross at each equinox point here in March and in this September time period. So you can see this. It's a great time when you're looking at the full moon, and over some hours during on the September 20th, that is where the sun is in at the March equinox. So you get kind of a preview. The moon is giving you a sort of a calendrical lesson for you to help a person navigate the sky. Okay, autumn equinox or September equinox. Priestess constellation still marks the autumnal seasonal point in the Northern Hemisphere. This would be the spring seasonal point in the Southern Hemisphere. It has been in this constellation since about 800 BCE. And about 4 centuries from now, so this is 800 BC, that's 2,800 years ago. And it's going to be another roughly 4 centuries before it gets into the Lion constellation. So we're not quite there yet, although some consider, depending on how one defines the constellation, that we're already in the in-between zone between the priestess and the lion. So again, this all depends on one's perspective, but it's drifting. The equinox point in September is drifting away from the priestess. So the priestess had numerous names over the ages, and she is more well known for her strong connection to Ceres Demeter as the symbol of the harvest, with the woman figure holding grains of the first summer / fall harvest. There's a lot of other, again, a lot of numerous names there, but this is one that others could identify with. There's 2 visible stars that sit next to the equinox point, Zavijava at 27.5 degrees Virgo, and Zanaya at 5 degrees Libra. They mark the shoulder, the wing. She's sometimes portrayed as kind of an earth angel, a wing or head of the priestess. In ancient Babylon, there was a reference to these stars as Ninsar. So that would be the goddess, or what they call the Lady of Heaven. This is from the book Star Names from Allen, the author Allen, and that is Richard Hinckley Allen. So if you wanted to reference these books, there's also a great website called Constellations of Words that I recommend looking at. The free website, although it has some annoying advertisements on it, but they do it in order to pay for the websites. But it's still a lot of good information from some references that especially references Allen quite a bit, and sometimes Olcott. All right, here is the September equinox point, or the 0 Libra point. We can see also Mercury and Spica here. We see Mars very close to the sun. In fact, in October, it actually goes into conjunction with the sun. Mars does. Mars is at 5 degrees Libra, right at conjunction with the star Zanaya. And here's look at how large the priestess constellation is. That's why it takes nearly close to 3,000 years to go for the equinox point to transit the full measure of that constellation. What's interesting about this is we get, it helps us understand, like, for example, Spica's role. So back in the year 285 AD, Spica marked, it was the exact point where Spica marked the equinox. Now, one could even say, because it moves so slowly, 72 years prior to that and 72 years after that, that Spica also marked the equinox, because it was only at 1 degree before and after. So really, it was kind of that marker for a few hundred years, but 285 just happened to be the sort of the center of that. What's interesting is Regulus. So the next really major star in the ecliptic, aside from Zavijava, which is coming up in just a couple hundred years, is Regulus. Regulus will move into the September equinox point in the year 4160. That's roughly the year, although it will start to mark it, a few hundred years before and a few hundred years after. So people will start to notice that. So this is, again, 2140 years from now is when that happens. The nebula, 22 Virgo, will mark the equinox point 2600, but it's not on the ecliptic. So it's one of the more well-known stars, but it's usually the ones that are on the ecliptic that are a little more important in that regard when it comes to these types of seasonal experiences. All right, so then we get into Mercury retrogrades, and we are entering into the 3rd retrograde period in September of 2021 for Mercury, September 26th through October 18th. And Mercury retrograde is in the sign of Libra, and Mercury stays in that sign for through September, all of September and all of October, and the first 5 days in November. But it entered the sign of Libra August 29, so it's not quite 2.5 months, but it's close. It's close. So during this time, Mercury and Mars are in conjunction in the underworld, and it's part of 3 conjunctions. There's one in August that happened in Virgo, one in October, and one in November. And Mercury also has a series of 3 conjunctions with Spica. Another prominent, another reference to this prominent star Spica, which is going to become really powerfully experienced by humanity over these next few months due to the equinox, due to Venus and Vesta, as well as, of course, Mercury. And since this is in the sign of Libra, it is about our conscious equal partnerships, relationship and community building, and the revelations of the underlying essence of what holds them together. So, Mercury retrograde can sometimes create confusion and miscommunication, and typically associated with things going awry. But the more that we get into the rational, linear, digital age, the more that things kind of get a little more wonky in a retrograde period, Mercury retrograde period. So it's more about the balance and more about also activating the creative part of ourselves and creative communication, creative relationship building, and a co-creation with community. So greater comprehension during this time of how the mind relates, how it relates. So how our mind, because Libra is an air sign, it's connected to relationships. And so it's the mind's perception to relationships and relates to the world around it, especially with people and groups. So this would be a time for not necessarily getting greater clarity. It's more like the creative exploration of the communication parts and perceptions in relationships, whether it be business or romantic or a relationship to the others around us. This could be a more creative period of time in that regard, or maybe how you communicate with yourself in your thoughts and perceptions, and maybe doing some kind of creative work that you want to build. This could be a great time for that. So here is Mercury and Spica on September 26th. As you can see, it's very close to Spica during this time. And they're not far from being the same magnitude. Mercury is going to be a little harder to see than Spica, just because it's a little more on the declination, closer to the northern hemisphere, closer to the horizon than Spica will be. But both will be a little challenging. They're only about 22 to 23 degrees from the sun at this point. And then Mercury will rapidly move closer and closer to the sun into late September, into early October, before coming out again. And those in the southern hemisphere, I believe they have a greater chance of seeing Mercury in the early evening sky. And we can see Venus over here by Zubin el-Janubi and Zubin el-Shamali, and how much brighter Venus is compared to not just those stars, but to Mercury and Spica as well. Venus sits at minus 4.2. And Venus by December, early December, will get to almost minus 5, which is really about at its maximum. It'll be about minus 4.9 at that point. All right, so one last thing to cover. This is a reminder that Mars in late August descended. So this is the surrender, the death, rebirth of the masculine, at least as interpreted through shamanic astrology. This is the masculine, not just in men, but in all people that have a part of themselves as the masculine. So it's a surrender into that space in our own, not just external relationships to the masculine, but the ones internal that we have with ourselves. And this is that surrender and death rebirth process. And there are going to be a lot of people, as there usually is, that go through this period that have trouble and experience more an underworld current in a way that might have more toxic effects in their own life, where they might be, or someone out there that could be consumed with things and obsessed and not really connected into their full path, perhaps, or they're learning some really powerful lesson that obsession or those toxic effects are teaching them, and then maybe ends up being the only way they end up learning. So in that case, that could be a great, powerful initiation, but it may not be certainly anywhere close to the most pleasant experience they might have. But it's about being honest with yourself, about owning and connecting to your own truth. That is something I talked about with Eris, is really owning that truth, owning your voice and owning the truth, really the deeper truth within, not just about what you believe, but what really is actually true. And what you truly want to manifest, and getting to the essence of it, and not to the all the things, the material things that we might cover it up or excuses we might share with that, but really into owning that that voice and that truth within ourselves. And this could be a way for the masculine to come to terms with itself. And each time we have a Mars synodic cycle that goes into the underworld, this is another opportunity for the masculine to come into that its own essence, its own truth, as it evolves in at this turning of the ages. All right, that's all that I have for you in this September equinox video. Like and share if you really liked what I had to share here today, and subscribe if you want to know more videos to come out, to more updates, because I'll be continuing to do more videos in the future. And I got the Bohemian Stars online course coming up with Caitlin Castell on September 22nd. And I'll be doing some events in coming up this September, and other events in September and October and beyond. So look forward to sharing with you all, sharing more about the happenings astrologically, and tune into the night sky, tune into the sky, develop a relationship on your own with it, and be part of it, fully participate in your lives. This is our opportunity in this lifetime, and each time we get the gift of coming here and learning and experiencing and being curious about the world. So I wish you all well and good tidings, and peace to all, everyone. Thank you.